another Friday, and we're back once again. Thank you. Wow. I am so grateful. 1,000 plays, downloads, subscriptions, and the countries that you guys are listening from. I never thought I would reach these spaces in such a short amount of time. And I am so grateful. That means you who are my friends, my family, you're sharing the podcast and is reaching places that I have never been before. And I'm thankful. It means a lot to me. I'm extremely grateful to God, and I am so thankful to all of you for the love, the comments, the encouragement, the suggestions, the ideas. Thank you for listening. Today on Conversations with Amma, this is our episode 12 in season 1, and we're going to talk about a phenomenon that most of us, including myself, are probably guilty of, and don't pay attention to because it's become ingrained, and it makes us have a sense of superiority, as if enduring suffering and pain in the eyes of spirituality is something that is laudable or martyrdom, basically, but I feel like in terms of martyrdom for religion or Christianity or spirituality, has to deal with sending the word of God and not when it comes to abuse. So today we'd like to look at it through the lens of victims of domestic abuse and how they actually deal with the spiritual bypassing. What we're going to talk about is called spiritual bypassing. Now, what is spiritual bypassing? It is a concept which was identified by a prominent psychotherapist by name John Wellwood, and I think in 1909 or 1918. And he defined spiritual bypassing as using spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid personal, emotional, and unfinished business. For me, that means avoidance and repression of your emotions, of things that have happened that have caused you trauma or pain, and instead of actually addressing the issue as it ought to be, so that the root will not kind of just simmer and hurt you and translate into other aspects of your life, we kind of repress those emotions. Now, for most individuals, spirituality serves as a way to kind of rise above or act as though the shaky emotions which lie beneath their person have been subdued by the fact that they have a relationship with God. So if someone has gone through abuse, has lived in a high conflict home, is going through domestic abuse, is even suffering, is living with someone who's even going through addiction, because when someone is addicted to hard substances, the family also goes through a lot. But then, or a mother or a parent with a wayward child, or a child who's living with narcissistic parents or toxic parents. Now, the whole spiritual bypassing is they are your parents, you do as they say, you live by their rules, but you know that the actions or inactions that they are doing for you at the moment are not serving you any purpose or are causing you pain. But by virtue of the fact that you cannot express it, or there's not an enabling environment for you to express that hurt or pain, because it will seem like you're being ungrateful. For parents who say to their children, I'm providing everything for you, the least you can do is to be quiet and not say that my actions have caused you pain. How about listening and saying that, what, I hear what you're saying, I may not see it from your perspective, but I'm listening. Is there a way that I could have done this better that would have made it easier for you? That's allowing them to have some openness, because you see, not listening eventually translates into them not speaking up at all in other situations. I'm digressing here. Okay, let's zone it back and bring it back home, right? Now, so, like I said, it makes the persons, rise above. They feel like they've risen above the shaky emotions, and by the fact that they have a relationship with God. So spirituality and the practice of it is used to compensate for self-sabotaging and challenging traits like low self-esteem, social isolation, abuse, and addiction. And it does not help, because our spiritual practices, because instead of addressing the situation, we are bypassing it, over using spiritual enlightenment. Oh, I am praying about it, or I am speaking to God about it. Yes, by all means do that, but get the help that you need from a psychotherapist, from a coach, from a therapist. Just get that help, please. So we use it, and it makes the spiritual enlightenment that we actually feel corrupted, because we are never fulfilled in terms of our emotional needs. We carry the pain around, and we hurt other people, our spouses, our siblings, our friends, our family, our work colleagues, and then we carry that pain and trauma around, and we are, just boiling down and simmering. And so you will find that somebody will actually go to church, and they are all, I'm going to church, I'm going to pray, and something happens and there's a trigger and they go off because the pain is simmering. The emotions of whatever they are going through is at the bottom, So when you are able to deal with your emotions, you understand that if someone is angry or they are misbehaving or anything, it's got nothing to do with you. Most of the time, when we haven't been able to deal with our own emotions, and people project their emotions, so it becomes a trigger, and we absorb, and we also project back, and the back and forth goes, and we feel like we are right, they are right. That's just what it is. I used to be a victim of that as well. So yes, using spiritual practices or religiosity to cover up problems seem like an easy way out, as opposed to facing the actual issue, dealing with it and healing from it, and allowing yourself room to grow through it into a better or emotionally healthy person. Now, if someone grew up with an abusive parent or in a high conflict home, and they have never had a chance to seek professional help to actually address their pain points and what they thought of the situation back then, they are just bypassing the pain. That's just what it is. And I know a lot of us are in this category. Yeah, bypassing the pain. Being a Christian, having a great relationship with God, doesn't mean that those elements are not subconsciously seeping into your relationships and how you deal with things, and the way you respond to certain things based off of the trauma that you endured during those periods, right? Especially in a space where silence or being quiet gives you some relief from the abuser's tongue or hands or feet or whatever tool that they were using, to suppress you. So we learn to repress instead of confronting those fears, and they carry on as usual. So that's just what it is. Now let's bring it home to domestic abuse. We've already indicated that the abuse is a sin. In my last episode, I touched on it. However, the pulpit is not explicit on it, right? They also help in the spiritual bypassing, because they would rather prefer the unit of marriage looking as a unit, instead of actually taking it apart and realizing that there are wounded souls within the system that need to be fixed before the marriage itself can be fixed. So they say pray, they say we'll give you a counselor, but they don't give you a therapist. Churches need therapists. They need in-house therapists. based off of the fact that they have counseling units. For instance, drug addicts will go to church. Some will pray and not touch alcohol again, based off the fact that they've renewed their minds. Or someone has gone through trauma and they've come to the church and they are looking for healing and pain. There has to be therapy. Therapy is not it shouldn't be tagged as, oh, as a mental health issue, or oh, then it means there's something wrong with you. No, we all go through things. Some people are great at finding self-healing and going through the journey and helping others. Some cannot do it on their own. So that is where, if counseling is being provided, then therapists should also be available, right? And so I will say that not having those units available do not help in complete healing. Now, they would rather have the victim, male or female, be burdened with the task of restoring the abuser, instead of the abuser admitting that they just need help and they need to change, and they are hurting the victim, or they've hurt the victim and they've caused them trauma and pain that will take time, even sometimes years, to rebuild because of the trauma. I mean, sometimes as far back as 2-3 years, a situation that you deal with. For instance, if you had an abuser who was petty when it came to your career goals, or if your career involved a bit of traveling or even one single trip and they acted up on it, you'll find that even when you're not in their space and something comes out with regard to you traveling or career goals, you become apprehensive. Your mind and brain remembers, and those feelings rush back. Now, when they rush back, you ponder over it a bit, and then you reel it back in and you realize, oh, I am safe now. I am not in that space. I don't need to explain myself to anyone, and this is what I want to do at the moment. This is what is good for me. This is what is going to push me to the next level of things that I want to do, or this is one of the things that I want to do right now for myself. So you take a deep breath and then you let it go gradually. You'll find that even for hours or a couple of days, that burden just rests on you, because it's just what it is. The only difference is that you know how to handle it. You understand, as per having the therapist go over what you need to do when those emotions rush back. You understand how to address it, right? Now, let's say this: spiritual bypassing, I've changed, doesn't cut it. Just saying I'm going to therapy doesn't cut it either, especially in the case of the abuser, when maybe the counseling unit or the churches or the family society is saying, oh, they say they've changed. No, it doesn't cut it. It won't work, because the victim is dealing with the abuse. They would have used the tactics of spiritual bypassing to feel as though everything was okay, whilst underneath the calm, there's turmoil, there's trauma, there's pain, there's guilt, there's shame, and helplessness, and all manner of emotions. Now, instead of confronting all these things and going through therapy to figure it out, you're just burdening the victim with it. Now, so what this leaves you with is an underlying feeling of anger as a result of the suppressed emotions. And if we do not take our time to address those underlying feelings or emotions, we cannot handle them, and they will continue to dictate our path in very unhealthy patterns. They are there, whether you like it or not. They are there. They are simmering, they are brewing, and they are causing you to make choices that you obviously shouldn't, that are not helping you in terms of even relationships, friendships, and career, and so many things. We tend not to put a lot of weight on it, but they are there. So it's important. Now, when it comes to abuse and how it is dealt with, I would say this again. I mean, you don't know how it feels like if you've not walked in a victim's shoes. A pain you've not felt might sound very, very, very far-fetched to you, and you find either family, friends, society, or the church saying things like pray more, praying will give you comfort and peace, and praying will cause God to change the abuser's heart, and all manner of things. Now, praying will give you comfort and peace as you pray for a little while, but the pain of abuse will keep on gnawing at you constantly until you become numb to the pain. And so you live in a state of uncertainty, because you know that the volcano will erupt. I mean, from the cycle of abuse that we talked about on our previous episodes, you will understand that there's always a calm before the storm. Now, what is happening is you are praying. Even the victim or the abuser will be going to church, will probably be serving in the church, or will be the preacher on the pulpit, or an elder, a deacon, whoever, a member, anyone. They will have a right relationship with God, in quotes, as the saints in the public eye, doing everything that they ought to do and look the part. But they would not have dealt with their own challenging emotions. So they will sometimes it's not even a challenging emotion. They just like to control people and just act the way they want. So there's a myth that all abusers will probably have gone through a situation that has made them the way they are. Sometimes it's not the case. That's a myth. While most of them have those tendencies, some don't at all. You will have to take case by case, because every case in terms of how it pans out might be different, but the underlying characteristics are the same. So what happens is that when you take it apart case by case, you realize that some just are mean. It's not a situation of what they saw or learned or habits they've acquired, but it's just who they are, right? So how do you let the victim live under the situation, knowing that, look, we're working on eggshells around here. Anticipate, understand that you're praying, you're going to church, you're smiling, everything, but an eruption is probably on its way, because no one has made the abuser face the fact that they are causing the victim pain. You'll find that usually they will say, cook for him more, clean for him more, love him more. The victim is always supposed to do something more, or something, be the high standard of what it means to be spiritually enlightened, be it Christian, Muslim, whatever religion that it is, So victims learn to adjust because of phrases like, forgive him or her, they will change. What would Jesus do? The Bible said forgive 77 times. So each time a situation happens, the abuser isn't held accountable. All they are held accountable for is, I apologize. Now, you who have caused you pain, you who have insulted, you who have financially abused, you who have sexually abused, you who have verbally abused, you who have mentally abused and psychologically abused, who's living with the trauma, who's living with the guilt, who's living with the pain, who's living with the flashbacks, who's living with the anxiety, who's living with the depression, who's praying, crying, hoping for change. You should understand that I am sorry, it's not me, and I'm working on it. Up until the next episode, let's keep praying and hoping, without letting the abuser understand that, you know what, this is a sin, this is nonsense, you need therapy, you need to cut this out, it won't work. And you need to understand that if the victim decides that they are taking so much X amount of time because this is too much of a burden. Do not put pressure on them. Rather, the victim is made to, bear the brunt. So spiritual bypassing is used in this case. The victim uses that to temporarily feel as though they are over the emotional pain of their abuse, because forgive them is what something is expected of you, is required of you, is the holy thing to do, is a Christ-like thing to do. Now they forgive. 2-3 days later, 4 days, a week, a month, a year, the cycle starts turning again, and then all those feelings that have been suppressed by the spiritual bypassing come reeling back again, smack bang in their face. Exactly. Now the questions we need to ask is, what was the point, right? And you realize that people who are spiritually bypassing are feeling, especially when it comes to the victim, they feel idealistic, that peace will be permanent. I have prayed, so the peace. So every time something happens, it comes as a shock, because in their minds it's unexpected, because they are living in denial, because the spiritual bypassing makes it look like everything will be fixed by God from heaven above, right? Now the cycle of abuse comes round back, and boom, it smacks them in their face, and they wake up to the fact that, look, it's not gone anywhere. It's still there, if not even worse, right? Overemphasizing on very small positive sides of a relationship and avoiding all the negativity that is happening is spiritual bypassing, because what it is you are not tackling the issues. Exhibiting frequent anger at things that shouldn't annoy you, because you're suppressing your anger. So things that should not annoy you just cause you to explode, right? If you're doing any of these things, you're probably spiritually bypassing. It will probably not always be in the settings of abuse, but other things. And then being overly compassionate or people pleasing, pretending that everything is okay when it isn't, you're spiritually bypassing. When it comes to spiritual bypassing, the victim uses it as a means to just go through the abuse with a false sense of superiority, because the pulpit says, enduring it makes you the bigger person. What will Jesus do? Will Jesus retaliate? Will Jesus say, no, I'm not doing this again? God hates divorce, and all the scripture that has been turned on its head to keep women, or women and male, actually, because both male and female go through abuse in domestic violence situations, so that they feel like when they make a decision to say, no, I'm not standing for this anymore, they are the ones that are letting the relationship down. But what about the many years or months or weeks of abuse that the abuser has put the victim through? Aren't they the one that by their own hands causing the damage? So we need to understand that abuse is cruel, and reacting in a way that makes it okay to say, I can't handle this anymore, is okay. We need to understand that, right? And so rather than spiritually bypassing and making the victim feel that it's cruel, and reacting makes them cruel because it's unforgiving and they are not restitution and it's not Christ-like. I mean, who is really not acting like the Christ-like one here? The abuser or the victim? Jesus didn't stand for injustice. Jesus didn't stand for people being treated abominably. Jesus didn't stand for people being treated treacherously. There's this myth, this thing, because of patriarchy, that when the man cheats, it's okay, but when the woman cheats, it's not okay. So there will be an uproar if a woman is in adultery. But when the man, I mean, look at the woman in the Bible who was going to be stoned, and Jesus said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Where was the man? Right? Where was the man? It's possible that even the man could have been married as well. There's nothing that's said of him. Right? But exactly, that's a spiritual bypass. And so Jesus confronted them with their own inadequacies and said, he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. So instead of addressing the issue as it ought to be addressed, they chose to see the victim as the one who was responsible for the situation, which is what we're doing when it comes to abuse, So the abuser, family, society, and the church also used it to force the hand of the victim through spiritual abuse to keep the victim chained to the shackles of abuse, as they themselves struggle with their own spiritual bypass. And now the victim is also feeling like, the more I endure, the more Jesus will reward me when it goes to heaven. I'm doing something that God approves of. God is saying, this is my cross to bear. No, darling, it's not your cross to bear. It is the sole responsibility of the abuser to fix themselves, to seek the help that they would want to seek. Because bear in mind also that when it comes to control and they've enjoyed it for so long, they will act like this is what it is, but old patterns come creeping right back again, So let's not make it difficult for the victim, who is actually also struggling with all these myriads of emotions, right? By all means, pray, but do the shadow work, which will deal with the root of, sending you on the path to emotional recovery and healing you. Because if you are not able to get the healing that is required, you will suppress all these emotions and those same patterns. That's why some people, look, there are many people who jump from one abusive relationship to the other, because they are not dealing with the underlying causes. They aren't. Until you deal with the underlying causes, you will make the same mistakes over and over and over and over again. So please, don't spiritually bypass. Pray, but get a therapist. Let it be a gift to yourself. It is important. It is imperative. It is the one thing that will set you on the path to healing. Because healing is not linear, and it's not an event. It's a lifelong journey. Because you will find that most of these tendencies and emotional pain and things stem from experiences that are 10, 20, 15, 30 years old. So can you imagine having had those experiences ingrained in your subconsciousness and the neuroscience of your brain for that long, right? For that long. And now you are trying to reset the path and find peace and healing. My dear, it's not an event. It's not an event with all the balloons, and no, it's going to take time. So please, pray, get a therapist, do the inner work, do the shadow work, start the journey of healing, start the journey of understanding what your triggers are and knowing how to handle them, and understand that it is not your fault and you are not to blame for any of these things. As always, this is Amma on Conversations with Amma. You can also call me Doris, Emma Tinker, Tinkerbell, Mommy M, Emmy. I respond to all of these names. Thank you for pressing play. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you for the encouragement. Thank you for wishing me well. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Until we meet again on these streets, do remember to keep sharing, to keep subscribing, to letting me know what you think. I am immensely grateful and I love you always. Thank you. right, I'm back again. There's a postscript. So I was reflecting over the recording yesterday, and then something occurred to me. You know this phrase that we use regularly? I wanted to still break it down for those of you who are new to spiritual bypassing, so that even when it's not in situations of abuse, you'll understand how you are minimizing your emotions and repressing it, because not allowing yourself to ask the question, how does this make me feel? I'm upset. Anger is an empty emotion if you do not really know and understand why something has caused your anger, right? So you've got to understand why you reacted the way you did and why you could have reacted better, or if you can, talk through the anger with the person who has caused you the anger. So we say things like, oh, forgive and forget. Oh, traso. For my Nanakan listeners, traso in Ghana is from the Tree language, and it means let it go, right? So what you're doing is you're not fully allowing the person express their emotions, and by you telling them that to them, the forgive and forget, they feel like, okay, so they are being asked to take responsibility and be the bigger person. Oh, I'm going to be the bigger person. All those things most of the time are spiritual bypassing, because you realize that the person has said forgive and forget, but when they see that person, or when another situation happens, those feelings come rushing back. That's spiritual bypassing. When you're really able to deal with a situation, what happens is the next time it comes up, you're able to express and understand the triggers, and then you put a plug on it and you know how to navigate it and express. You should be able to say, you know what, you did this to me, I'm upset about it, I am angry, I didn't like how that made me feel, and I'm trying to process the anger. Can you give me a second to deal with this, and then we can have a conversation, right? So, but before even expressing the anger is deemed as, oh, you shouldn't be angry, don't get angry. Anger is an emotion. I'm allowed to feel it. The Bible says get angry but do not sin. So once I'm within the confines of proper anger management, I have every reason to be angry. I have every reason to be upset. I have every reason to want to grieve. I have every reason to want to cry. I have every reason to want to say that, you know what, you upset me. I don't want to deal with this situation. This is how it's affecting me, and I don't want to engage. But most of the time, we're put in the position of be the bigger person, be the better person, and we bypass the situation, right? So for our daily examples, those are things. Spiritual bypassing, it's a term that is used, and so basically most of these things come from the fact that they will say, oh, you're a Christian, you're a Muslim, you're a Hindu, whatever that you are, don't do this, let it go, be the better person. But then what that has done, it has repressed the anger, it has repressed the emotion, it has not been dealt with. Everything that stems from these philosophies that we follow or are subscribed to have been used to make us keep quiet. So that's just a postscript that I wanted to add.